Hello. So today I will be discussing students in the digital age from the perspective of students as well as teachers. And I'll be drawing upon some data I collected, interviewing a number of teachers, as well as surveying a number of my students. So to start off, I'll talk about the students and the survey that I gave them. I will share my screen so you can take a look at the Google Forms survey that I administered. Share screen. Here we go. Okay, so this is the survey that I sent to one of my classes. This is a grade 6 study skills class. And I wanted to know, first of all, like how much screen time are they getting per day in general? Because they're often using screens both at school and, of course, once they get home. So I set up a number of answers there to capture that. I also wanted to know how they felt they were in terms of their skill at using technology, their technological proficiency. And I wanted to know what they thought of the amount of technology teachers at my school, the American school, typically use. Do they think that our teachers are using it not enough, that they should be incorporating it more into the classroom, just the right amount, or perhaps too much? I also just wanted to get a little quick snapshot of my students' social media use. So I surveyed them on the 5 most popular forms of social media today to get an idea about that. Beyond that, I wanted to know if they took extra classes outside of school, and also what they felt was their biggest weak point, the subject they needed the most help with. I know these students already, so it wasn't exactly a getting to know you survey. I just wanted more information, specifically with relation to technology. So 7 of my students responded, and I will show you the data that I collected there. And in terms of the amount of computer usage, most of them were saying they use between 4 and 6 hours per day on computers, smartphones, tablets, and so forth. To be honest, this surprised me. I thought it would be higher than this. And one of the reasons is I suspect that once at home, my students spend a significant portion of their after-school time on some sort of device, and that actually probably a majority of the day while they're at school, they are using a device. And I base this upon the fact that although I have a study skills class, most of my job I'm pushing in as the special education teacher. So I'm seeing a lot of other teachers at my school, how they run their lessons, and a good deal of them have the entire class based around the students using their laptops or tablets and so forth. So if most of the school day they're on the device, and at least some reasonable proportion of their time after school they're on a device, I would expect that that adds up to more than 4 to 6 hours per day on a device. So I'm not entirely sure about their result here, whether that's accurate. We did have one student that I think was perhaps more honest, who said that more than 10 hours per day. That would absolutely not surprise me at all. And unbelievably, we had one who said only 1 to 2 hours per day, which I don't think is actually possible based on what I observe in most of the classes here. In terms of their level of technology, most people rated themselves as basically okay or pretty good with technology. Only 1 of the 7 said that they were poor with technology. In terms of what they think of our use of technology in the classroom as teachers at the school, most felt that it was about right. 1 thought it wasn't quite enough, which was a little surprising to me. And you'll see some contrast in their perspective compared to the teachers that I surveyed, but we'll get to that soon. Social media, Instagram was the most popular by far. A great deal of them use Instagram. TikTok, not far behind. Facebook, I think, has a reputation for being a bit of a boomer social media these days. And Twitter had very low usage. Only 1 student uses Twitter. That doesn't surprise me, really. And after school classes, we had quite a range of responses, but most of them do have additional classes after school. For some of them, it's sports and music. some language in there. I'd say one of the most common is maths, and a little bit of English there as well. But languages and maths seemed to be the most popular. And in terms of what they need the most help with, English, maths, those seemed to dominate. So that's what I got from the students, and we'll compare and contrast that with what the teachers gave me. So I surveyed 3 teachers. We'll go through the questions and answers for each of them. And the first is both a teacher with a great deal of experience, over 30 years of teaching. He's also the school psychologist here. And I wanted to survey him because I knew that he would have a more pessimistic take on technology in the classroom. In fact, he's done a number of workshops on the dangers of overuse of technology, the correlations between increased screen time and various, mental health maladies. Depression seems to go up with the amount of social media use, for example. He talks a lot about the disruption of sleep patterns caused by the use of bright screens late towards bedtime and so forth. So I knew I would get something pretty negative from him. It was probably more negative than I anticipated. The first question that I asked my teachers was, in your opinion, what are the top 3 benefits of integrating technology in the classroom? And I think the first sentence of his response tells you a lot about his perspective. It is difficult to think of 3 benefits, let alone suggesting more by asking for the top 3. So straight away you get an idea of his disposition towards technology. He admits that it's great for research. When you want students to research a topic, it's a lot easier and more convenient than trying to go to the library and spending a great deal of time there. And the use of projectors for displaying images, graphs, maps, and so forth is a huge boon compared to the days where teachers would have to chalk and blackboard, chart things out on the board, a lot more laborious. Certainly we save a lot of time with that. But he says here, we've got any other possible benefits are outweighed by the detrimental effects that excessive time spent on electronic devices. So the second question I asked was, in your opinion, what are the top 3 risks, drawbacks, or downsides of integrating technology in the classroom? He gave us 6 points there. Encourages negligence by teachers, facilitates inattention by students, interrupts social interaction amongst students and teachers, stifles development of reading skills, turns education over to tech companies, and disrupts sleeping patterns. So he had no problem whipping up a pretty big list of the downsides as he sees them. I would agree with some of these, especially based on the observations that I do pushing into classrooms to support students with special education. I feel that certain habits were built up, especially during online learning. Some of these unlocked amazing new benefits, which I guess I'll talk a little bit about towards the end. But I think it also got people into some habits that certainly make things easier for the teacher, but I'm not sure really provide an educational benefit to the students. I think some people found some shortcuts they could use technology for. And you end up with, well, you'll see he comments on some teachers pretty much saying, here's some digital stuff, you do this, and I'm just going to kind of sit back and do my own thing on my computer up the front of the class. So how can downsides of technology integrated classrooms be mitigated? He thinks that we should limit the device usage time to at most 50% of instructional time. Schedule regular technology-free days and weeks. He's been pushing for this for a while at our school. And when students enter the classroom, make the default be keeping technology stowed away. I literally have some students walking into the classroom with their laptop open. My classroom, I tell them, we might use technology, but when you come into my classroom, I don't want to see any laptops or tablets. I will tell you when I want you to take these out. Many teachers don't do that. In fact, they often do the opposite. They say, make sure that the first thing you do when you enter my classroom is set up your laptop and log into the Google Classroom. And sometimes there's a kind of warmer activity that is engaged in from the get-go. Okay. He thinks we should keep the following question in mind when planning learning and assessment. Can I make learning happen without using this device? And he thinks we should be aiming to not use a device if we can achieve the same educational outcomes without using one. Would you say teachers at the American school integrate technology into their lessons? A, not enough, B, just the right amount, or C, too much? Same question that I gave the students, but I wanted the teacher's point of view on that. He thinks too much. In fact, it is routine for many to assign work for students to do on their devices, then sit at their own device while students are unmonitored to do as they decide. This is not integration, it is babysitting. So then I had a question. I wanted to see whether they thought overall technology was beneficial to students. If two equivalent classrooms were compared, all else being equal, but where one received highly technologically integrated lessons and the other received traditional instruction without technology, e.g. chalk and blackboard or markers and whiteboard, paper handouts, etc., would you expect the class receiving technologically integrated instruction to A, perform significantly better, B, somewhat better, C, equally, D, somewhat worse, or E, substantially worse? And he believes that they would perform substantially worse with a heavy integration of technology. I think that's perhaps overstating it. I don't think that it would be a huge detriment. In fact, I don't think it would be a detriment at all. I think that perhaps it would be equally well. It depends, of course, on the subject and the material. But he, again, has a very pessimistic view. So as technology continues to advance, how do you feel about the future of education? Optimistic, neutral, or pessimistic? He is very pessimistic. And why? Well, he just refers back to his other questions, the other answers. Which single use of technology in the classroom has had, in your opinion, the greatest benefit on student learning, providing students with a vast library for research? Which single use of technology in the classroom has had, in your opinion, the greatest benefit in terms of making teaching and lesson preparation easier, and expanding teacher resources, allowing, there's a vast repository of materials online that a teacher can call upon, and it makes improving upon lessons and assessments easier. I also asked about ChatGPT because that is extremely topical right now, and he thinks that it's going to have a disastrous effect. It might be the #1 reason not to integrate technology, to have a technology-free classroom. Now, I've got two other teachers that I surveyed. One is the head of department for the maths department here. He had a much more balanced view than the school psychologist / social studies teacher. And he talks about the benefits. There are various tools that he's implemented in his classrooms and his department that are really beneficial for teaching mathematics. Rather than a teacher having to use, rulers and try and graph things on the board manually, which is a slow process, students themselves can easily create graphs and manipulate graphs and understand relationships in mathematics using certain tools. The ability to give students questions and then monitor their answers in real time and see which kinds of questions most students are getting wrong. It provides a lot of feedback that he finds beneficial. In terms of the drawbacks, he talks about the downside is that they lose the ability to manually draw graphs if they can get used to using these tools on computers. The delusion that a concept is understood if it can be Googled. This one resonates with me. I have students who think as long as I can do a Google search or something and bring up a page, I know the subject matter. And overuse of technology in all lessons, meaning students spend far too long looking at a screen. So he's echoing some of the concerns of the school psychologist there. How can we mitigate that? Very strict rules about technology and investing in teacher tools that allow adequate monitoring of student activity. This monitoring is a big issue. I see a lot of teachers. I'm more towards the back of the classroom most of the time. I'm seeing behind the screens, whereas the subject teacher is often at their front desk or front of the room, and they do not see what is on the student screens. And the amount of time that I'm seeing games, Discord chats, and other distractions that the teacher isn't even aware of, it's mind-blowing. Anyway, so again, that question about equivalent classrooms, one high-tech, one low-tech, he thinks it depends on the topic taught. And over the whole curriculum, students would likely perform worse. So he's, again, got the more pessimistic view over high technological integration. And then his outlook is neutral with regards to the future of education and technology development. In terms of the greatest benefit, the ability to sit and monitor online tasks. So getting that immediate feedback, watching the students go through the questions, seeing which ones they're getting wrong, is very useful to him. Single best benefit of technology, the online and technological resources, ability to create good presentations. So it's in terms of aiding delivery, I would say. ChatGPT, he finds that fascinating, and the need for increased monitoring and creativity in student assessments. This is a huge topic throughout this school. I don't have formal surveys of all of the teachers, but certainly we talk about this every lunch break. And, you know, teachers are recognizing the need to, in the face of technological advancement, to actually look backwards and go back to pen and paper assessments. We can't say, go home and write this essay, which was already fraught with difficulties in terms of plagiarism, students copying and pasting things. Now they're recognizing we really have to go back to write this essay in class time, pen and paper. But for some students, especially special needs students, I'll talk about that towards the end, we can't go all the way back. They need assistive technology. Okay, the third teacher covers a broad array of subjects: science, mathematics, and ICT. And he gave more brief bullet point list type answers. Benefits is in line with modern technology. Of course, we have to prepare our students for the modern and emerging world. Google for searching, various online tools he sees as beneficial. The downside, students being distracted. I see this all the time because they bring their own devices in. They can play games. They can access things that they shouldn't be. It is not well controlled. Less focus on writing, and students having tools to correct them and neglect things like spelling. I know a lot of my students use things like Grammarly, but even plain old word processors will tell you if your spelling's wrong and will, you know, basically correct it for them. Okay, how can the downsides be mitigated? Firewalls. We don't do a good enough job at this school of blocking access to certain things. We have literally had a grade 6 student accessing pornography a few weeks ago in the classroom. Another student used their technology to take a photo of that and send that to the principal. Anyway, he thinks that our teachers use technology too much in the classroom. So again, we've got on the more pessimistic side from this teacher's point of view. And he doesn't think that there'd be any difference between the two hypothetical classrooms, one integrating a lot of technology, one doing things the old-fashioned way. Overall, he's optimistic about technology. No, he's pessimistic, rather, sorry. And ChatGPT as something that is going to be a big problem in terms of aiding cheating. We're going to sort of, I think from his perspective, outsource our thinking and our skills to devices and technology, which will not do them any benefits. But researching and YouTube instructional videos are the biggest benefit in his view. And it makes preparing lessons a lot easier. Slideshows and other resources available online certainly benefit teachers. But he sees ChatGPT as a very big threat to learning. Okay, so that's the student and teacher perspective that I was able to gather. I'm not as pessimistic as the three teachers that I interviewed. I see their point, and I agree with many of their points, but I think they are perhaps not seeing the other side of the coin. the incredible benefits that technology can provide. I'm already using some of this myself and seeing ways that it can be used. You know, there are things that were unlocked for me during the lockdown and online learning. The ability to have students share writing with me, and then as a whole class, we can look at that together and make corrections, and all the students can see these corrections and suggestions for improvement. All of them can benefit. The old way, where I might be walking around the classroom and I might one-on-one be able to say, I like this needs to be fixed, that would only benefit a single student. Now my corrections can benefit everybody in the class. They can all learn from that. I think that ChatGPT can be integrated in very productive ways. We can, ask ChatGPT to improve a text, and we can look at and analyze the way that it did so. We could present an argumentative essay and ask ChatGPT to provide a counter argument and analyze that and think about how we could incorporate elements of that. So I think overall, students do have too much screen time these days, which is not physically or mentally healthy. I think that social media has some serious mental health downsides. I think we need to control our technology at the school a lot better, restrict access. In my ideal world, they would not bring in their own device. They would be provided with a controlled device that limits them only to what we want them to be able to access. So there's a lot of room for improvement, but I see great potential in technology as well. I've got a much more balanced view, and I think that we can do things to mitigate the downsides while still benefiting from the upsides in a way that is net beneficial to our students. Now, I want to touch a little bit on special education as well. As a special education teacher here, I see the absolute need for technology for some of my students. I've analyzed the case study in one of the other assessments here, a student I'm calling Niles. That's not his real name, but he is based on a real student here. And he's high-functioning autistic. One of his issues is that he is very slow and virtually illegible with his handwriting. He is bad at note-taking in general, just in terms of the concept of identifying main ideas and knowing what to take down. That's something we're working on. But then on top of that, the fact that, he literally sometimes holds his pen or pencil like this, and he's scrawling large, messy notes that are very slow to write. It's no good, but he can type perfectly well. And so at times when a teacher has asked students to do written work, pen on paper, pen and pencil on paper, as is increasingly the case when we're trying to account for the ability of students to just cheat online with ChatGPT and so forth, I've been telling teachers, Niles needs to still use his computer. I will monitor him, make sure he's not just copy-pasting or using ChatGPT, but it's the only practical way that he's going to be able to complete assessments and take notes in class. So he needs that even when you're trying to detect certain activities for other students. And that's just one example. We don't have a lot of severely disabled students at the school, but it's theoretically possible we're going to have students who need voice to text, text to voice, and other assistive technology. We cannot strip them of that. They absolutely need that integrated into their lessons. Okay, I'm certain this has gone well over 5 minutes. So I'm going to wrap things up now, and hopefully that hits all of the points that I'm supposed to. So I will see you later.